kids. And remember that people in power, the white supremacy, that these institutions, they will never recognize your humanity. They want to commit genocide. And you read about innocent history and you let it happen. How dare you?
Abolishing ICE. It seems unconventional to some people.
More Democrats are getting in line with that. Kirstjen today saying we need to abolish ICE.
Well, I hope they keep thinking about it because they're going to get beaten so badly. Do you know, ICE, these are the guys that go in and take MS-13 and they take them out because they're much tougher than MS-13.
But it is now a serious political talking point. In fact, many politicians are now campaigning under the Abolish ICE movement. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who just won the Democratic nomination for a congressional seat in New York, helped propel the call to action.
In order for us to feel safer in our streets, our churches, our schools, and our homes, we must abolish ICE. This is the legislation that we need, and this is the legislation that is going to move us forward as a country.
And so did Cynthia Nixon, an actress and activist who is running for governor of New York.
They're being separated throughout this country by ICE.
Yes.
I think we need to abolish ICE. That seems really clear.
Even current New York Senator Kirstjen is jumping on board.
She's also got some positions that are even to the left of Bernie Sanders. She wants to get rid of ICE. Now, what are you going to do with your party if you do come into a majority?
Well, I agree with it. I don't think ICE today is working as intended.
Well, you think you should get rid of the agency?
I believe that it has become a deportation force.
Should ICE be abolished, though? I don't know. The U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement is a law enforcement agency of the federal government that works under the jurisdiction of the Department of Homeland Security. According to their website, ICE's annual budget of approximately $6 billion is devoted to 3 operational directives. They include Homeland Security investigations, enforcement and removal operations, and the Office of Principal Legal Advisor. Homeland Security Investigations is responsible for investigating crimes committed at the border. Enforcement and removal operations is responsible for deporting people. Their mission is to, quote, arrest and remove aliens who present a danger to national security or are a risk to public safety, as well as those who enter the United States illegally or otherwise undermine the integrity of our immigration laws and our border control efforts. In my opinion, the mission statement could go without the first part, since they make it clear in the second part that they also deport people who don't pose a present danger. And it's this second part that many activists have a problem with, since many people interpret the original mission of ICE to be the detainment and deportation of only undocumented immigrants that pose a security threat. All of these ICE raids that seem to be targeting undocumented immigrants at random are very disturbing to friends and families of the over 11 million undocumented people within our borders. Now, I already know what some people might be thinking. Well, they broke the law in coming over here, so all 11 million should be deported.
Donald, is it realistic to just send all those people back? How are you going to do it? I mean, won't that be a disruption?
Everything's a disruption. It's a disruption having a lot of our jobs taken by people.
Deporting people indiscriminately would completely fuck our economy. In an ICE raid that happened in Morristown, Tennessee, 97 undocumented workers were arrested from their jobs at a meatpacking plant. The New York Times reports that the reason employers were turning to so many undocumented workers in this region is because the meth and opioid epidemic in Tennessee has taken a toll on a lot of working-age Americans. Though some people might blame undocumented immigrants for the lack of jobs, the reality is that some undocumented workers are just much more qualified. When I first heard these calls to abolish ICE, my initial reaction was that it was absolutely ridiculous to even consider getting rid of a reputable law enforcement agency. But the more I looked into it, I kind of came to the conclusion that the outrage is justified, but just a little misguided. It's not ICE that's the problem. It's the people in the current administration that are pushing for new enforcement policies.
I have put in place a zero-tolerance policy for illegal entry on our southwest border. If you cross the border unlawfully, then we will prosecute you.
Under the right direction, ICE could very much stick to deporting only undocumented people that pose a credible threat, but under the president's direction, every undocumented person is suddenly made a criminal. In testimony given to the House Homeland Security Subcommittee hearing on border security priorities, former acting director of ICE, Thomas Homan, reminds Congress that ICE doesn't create the laws, they just enforce them.
It's ICE's job to make sure that those who choose to come into the United States illegally are found, arrested, and if ordered by the immigration judge, removed. That's the oath I have taken, along with the other 20,000 law enforcement officers in ICE, who are constantly attacked simply for doing their congressionally mandated jobs.
Now, in the same testimony given to the subcommittee, I just wanted to point out that the new acting director of ICE, Ronald Vitiello, said that families would not be detained separately if they present themselves at a port of entry.
Thank you. And as far as your question or your comment, if they show up at a port of entry and make their asylum claims, they won't be prosecuted and they won't be separated. The department has no policy just to separate families.
And I'll just add, if they choose to use the port of entry, then the prosecution, that's not against the law, so prosecution won't be contemplated in those cases.
Okay, well, I'm out of time.
Thanks.
I yield back.
Though there are some reported instances of separation still happening, I'm not necessarily trying to defend the actions of ICE in this situation. I'm just trying to explain that it is the current laws and the big bosses that are creating the immigration injustices, not ICE. I believe that ICE was created out of genuine fear of terrorists during a time when the nation was in agreement that something needed to be done to make sure 9/11 never happens again. But still, with all of that being said, in my opinion, I think that the current Secretary of Homeland Security, Kirstjen Nielsen, should resign and be replaced, since she's made it already clear that she will be complicit in whatever the Trump administration does, even if that includes detaining parents without their children. She would rather spin instead of rightfully take responsibility for this failed policy and admit to the American people that it was implemented as a deterrent to other families.
Are you intending for this to play out as it is playing out? Are you intending for parents to be separated from their children? Are you intending to send a message?
I find that offensive. No, because why would I ever create a policy that purposely does that?
Perhaps it's a deterrent.
No,
it says it was a deterrent.
The way that it works.
It was a deterrent.
She didn't even want to admit that this policy existed in the first place.
This administration did not create a policy of separating families at the border to fix this.
This policy is not, by your definition, in any way cruel.
It's not a policy.
This is something that Congress can change, and yet
yes,
this is something that was enacted after the Attorney General announced the zero tolerance policy. This never happened before he announced the zero
That's actually not
policy.
true. So the last administration, the Obama administration, the Bush administration, all separated families at the. They absolutely did. Well, they did. Their rate was less than ours, but they absolutely did do this. This is not new.
We do have a lot of immigration laws that we need to enforce, but I think we can enforce them with a lot more humanity and ethics. Considering that no amount of legal persecution will deter people running from violent situations, there's no reason we should be separating families, and we certainly should not be indiscriminately targeting every undocumented person. Strong border security is reasonable, but so is respecting genuine asylum claims and cutting out all of the blatant misinformation about undocumented people being propagated by the president.